Greetings from IAS. We want to welcome you again to this very special program on sexual harassment. This is United in Diversity, broadcasting from IAS, Sri Lanka, Vite, Philippines. Today we have a very important topic, and we can't wait to hear what the ladies have to tell us. They are not experts in this topic. They don't have the PhDs in psychology. But we know they have so much large wealth of knowledge and maybe experiences they have seen or heard or experienced themselves that they can help with us with to understand this topic. Before we start, I just want to let everybody know that the opinions that are shared here, they are opinions of our participants. They are not the views or the philosophy of IAS. Therefore, if you have questions, please email us. Do not attribute this to IAS as an institution. If you have questions, email us. I'm going to share with you the email address at the end of the program. I want us to meet our three panelists that we have this afternoon. I want you to introduce yourself and tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing here at IAS. Let's start on my left side.
I'm Carol Kingston. I'm from India, and I'm doing my PhD in education.
Thank you. Welcome. Let's go to the next person.
I'm Arceli Rosario. I'm from the Philippines. I teach in the education department.
Welcome, Dr. Rosario.
Hi, I'm Trevlyn Oberholster. I come from South Africa, in Botswana, and I work in human resources.
Welcome. Welcome to our program, Mrs. Oberholster. As you can see, they are from 3 different countries, and they represent actually 3 big major cultures. Although Mrs. Kingston comes from, both Mrs. Kingston and Dr. Rosario come from Asia, but these are 2 completely different parts of Asia that could count as 2 different continents. So let's go to the first question. And the first question is, how do you personally define sexual harassment? Let's start with Mrs. Oberholster.
I personally define it as somebody who tries to get too close and makes me feel uncomfortable. That's a basic way.
So you're getting too close to the person to the point that the person becomes uncomfortable. And this basically doesn't have to be only sexually related.
Not really.
Okay.
Of course, harassment is one way, and of course, there's always the overture of sexuality.
Okay. All right. Let's try with Dr. Rosario.
Sexual harassment to me is an act which is sexual in nature, which is done usually because, I always view oppression, like this one. That's where I come from. This is done by somebody who is more powerful to somebody who is helpless. So this is and because according to literature and my experience, while men are also harassed, but usually it's women and the weaker or member of the society, they are the ones that are harassed. So I see this as a domination and subordination issue.
I want to come back to one point that you talked about power. Are they, let's say it's the men who are harassing the women, are they always because they are in power? Can a powerless man actually sexually harass a woman?
Usually a man, or can also be a woman, can use harassment because of wrong understanding of power.
Okay, exactly. That's what I wanted to lead to. That they, not necessarily because they have power, but because they think they have power. Some, it may be really because they have power, but others is because they think they have power. For example, in the other session, we heard of the case of India, where by default, women are considered to be powerless. So even a man who has no power still operates under the definition, the mentality, the philosophy that they have power even if they are powerless. Okay, let's try another definition here.
To me, I would say it's an unwelcome sexual behavior towards another person.
Okay, I think we have already a good definition here. Let's try another question. Where is sexual harassment most common? At home, at church, at school, at work, on the street? Where is it the most common? Let's start with Dr. Rosario.
In the Philippines, I usually see sexual harassment happening more in the streets. In fact, in some of literature that I've read, it's like, this whistling. It's very common in the Philippines. A woman passes by, and then it's just like also normal.
Okay, which one? There's all kinds of whistling. Can we hear it?
I do not know how to
whistle.
I
heard the sound in the audience. Is that the one?
Yes, this one.
Okay.
This wolf, you call this wolf or cat calling?
Yes.
Yes. This is very common to us
here.
I don't know with other countries, but here. But this is the obvious one.
Okay. But that is sexual harassment, right? Is it considered in the Philippines sexual harassment?
Yes.
Okay.
This is
because in
sexual
most
harassment.
cultures it is. I just wanted to clarify that.
But some Filipinos do not know that. I mean, yes, I think also other people. That's why we need education.
Yes.
We need to say, okay. But in the homes, this can happen. For example, because we are communal in nature, like we extended families, so many uncles and cousins, and we live in an compound, very close houses. It's like it's very common to touch the children, and this touching is very common. It's either the one doing it does not know that it's not proper, and of course the child, of course, does not know that it is proper. And usually here in the Philippines, there are instances when the children are not dressed properly, and the private parts are exposed, and it's like they play with they play with the private parts of the small ones.
And for them, they're doing this from
it's like
from
an
just
endearment.
Endearment.
But I see it. That's why when I speak against
yes,
it.
Yes.
Like you do not do that. And also, parents, you dress your children properly. But you see around, they are dressed only half, and the down half, is exposed. And also, like, they cuddle the children. Men cuddle the children. The female children, they cuddle. And then, all this kind of touching. And then these children grow up and they do not understand themselves.
Ooh. That's too much to think about.
Yes, and too much. And also, I would like to speak because some houses are very close, and some homes do not even have rooms. So you have there the parents and the children. And to me, this is just sexual harassment because this is like wrong education to children about sex. And I read one article of this was an autobiography, and the author was saying, in the night, I hear muted sounds of mating.
Oh, man. That is definitely sexual harassment of the children, and the parents harassing their own children. Oh, wow. We're looking at other aspects that we didn't find in the other session. Let's travel down to South Africa. Where is sexual harassment most common? I know you have lived in different places, so you feel free to share from different places. You've lived in Asia and in the islands, Pacific Islands, I think, and also in South Africa.
I think most of it is in the workplace and maybe some at school. I've come most in contact with it at workplace and school, although, like Dr. Asili said, there is a lot in the home. So one does have to be careful about certain things, home is more, which I would almost term abuse instead of harassment. But I think in the workplace and school is more harassment.
It's good you have raised the word sexual abuse. We're going to come back to that concept in another question. Let's hear from Mrs. Kingston.
I think I remember one incident when my mom told me what had happened in her workplace with one of the ladies. This was the officer. The CEO was doing something to the friend, my mom's friend. And that was, I think it was the distance of them standing. And my mom's friend did not like, he was coming very close to her, even though he was trying to tell some official things. And she was feeling so uncomfortable that she couldn't hold her hands, and she gave him a tight slap. And she asked him, "What are you trying to do? Are you telling me official things or what? Your distance between me counts a lot." So that was one thing when she got back home, and she just told only me, because since I'm the eldest daughter in the family, and she said, this is what had happened today, and it's just for you to learn something. Be careful when you stand with men, keep a little distance, because some men, we don't say all, some of them have that thing in mind. So I said, what else did she do? Then she said, we just saw her giving him a slap, and she went away from that place.
Things are happening around the world as we can see it here. Let's go to the next question. What type of sexual harassment have you either experienced or you have seen anywhere? Let's start with Mrs. Oberhoster.
Unfortunately, I have experienced this. I lost a good promotion and a month or two of paychecks because I was not willing to accept sexual advances or the harassment. Didn't help my mental health, but I was not quiet about it either, which did not help my family standing in the town. It was an experience that I would not wish on anybody else. And when we talk about sexual harassment, we often think of, one of the things we think of is intercourse. Actually, sexual harassment starts very small, like touching a hand, touching a leg, touching a shoulder, an arm, and further on. And it doesn't start with sex. It may end with sex, but it doesn't start there. So many times when we think of sexual harassment, these other little things that build up to the actual sexual act, we kind of ignore or try and put it aside. Maybe that person didn't mean it this way or something like that. And yet, this is where it begins. And as it continues in intensity, that is when you kind of realize after a while, wow, this is what's going on. And when you try and stop it, what's wrong with you? What's your big issue? Your friend allows me to do it, your co-worker allows me to do it, why don't you want me to do it? And you can actually have some of these discussions, it's very interesting. And my co-worker said, well, if you want the promotion, if you want a paycheck, extra paycheck, you better let him do what he wants to do to you. And yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. That should never happen. And especially in our Adventist institutions and organizations and businesses and hospitals, please let us fight that to the highest level. It should never happen. Yes, please.
This was actually not in an Adventist institution where I worked. And thereafter, I wasn't interested in working outside after that.
Dr. Rosario.
I would like to add to what you said, that in our church, we should fight this against this one to the highest level.
And it should be intentional.
Yes.
It should be in our manual and employment, manual and everything. It should be very intentional.
Actually, the General Conference has a statement against on sexual harassment. But I would like to say, and this may surprise you, that in our recent findings of the SSD church member survey, there's one question there. Have you been sexually abused? That's the term used by an authority figure in the church. And the result is that 15% of the respondent answered yes. 15%. You may say that's small, but we tried to compute that. It's like 3 in every 20. And think that the question is about authority figure that excludes those that are not authority figure in the church. That means to say that sexual harassment or sexual abuse is happening in the church. And we should not close our eyes to that because this is a very real thing.
Whew. Okay. I have so much to bite on here today. Let's try with Mrs. Kingston.
All right. Yes, experienced.
Have you either seen or experienced it yourself?
I had one experience. This was when I was in grade 10. We used to go to school by bus. So my mom used to say, be careful if men come near to you, just be alert. And in India, if you sit inside the bus, there's usually a separate seat for men, separate seat for ladies. And if the seats are full, you have to stand, but you have to stand on your own side. Yeah. So I was right in the front thinking that when the bus stops, I will get down quickly and get to school. But here was a very, disrespectful man. He was just behind me, and I had my school bag behind me. And he was coming so close, and I was so angry. I really wanted to do something. So I had a safety pin with me, and I put the safety pin behind my back, and he didn't realize because my school bag was, in between him. So I put the safety pin, and he came closer and pushed in, and then, ouch, he said that. And then he left the place. And I know where it had hit him, and I said, that's very good. Sometimes you need some lessons to learn. And we are just I'm just a school girl. So that was one experience I had. And then when I went home, I told my mom, and she said, carry more safety pins, she told me. So I did that, and I even gave my friends. And they had the same experience like that. And we always have safety pins in our school bags. Even if the teacher asks, why are you bringing it, we would explain to the teacher why we have those.
I think the lesson that we can learn from this story, if statistics show that women are more sexually harassed than men, women need to protect themselves too. I'm not asking you to buy guns, but if we looked at what Edgar was saying in the other session, where the way you're dressing, you are actually exposing yourself. If you are sexually harassed, actually, you are the first person to blame for that. Whether we like it or not, you are playing a role in that. So we should protect ourselves. We should find. Can you tell us some of the ways women, young ladies, can protect themselves? Dr. Rosario, I know you have been educating people for a long, long time.
Well,
Please,
of course,
some
Carol's,
practical.
yes.
We have the safety pin. What else?
That's very creative. Well, to me, the education should begin from very small, where you tell the child that, whether boy or girl, that they should not allow anybody to touch them. Whether even the father cannot touch the boy. I mean, you don't touch the private part of. So that's one way. But when you are already conscious, like in the case of Carol, one way, of course, is you do not isolate yourself because these things happen. Like there's one incident of cousins, boy and girl. They were asked to do an errand, but it was night, and along the way, the cousin raped the girl. And so, you protect yourself. You do not isolate yourself. And also, when I was principal, there was a practice of the school, this sleepover. And then it's not in my mental model. I haven't heard about sleepover. I mean, in my family, no sleepover. And so I talked to them. At first, they were like, they reacted really violently about that one. But I talked to them. We had a discussion with parents, teachers. And eventually, we stopped this practice because it can happen there, And they view movie, they sit together, boys and girls, and then they are now sleepy night, then they just sleep here, boys and girls. That's very dangerous.
Thank you so much. We're going to look at some statistics from around the world. This is a report that was done by the CNN. Let's look at them one by one. In 2017, 35% of women globally have experienced physical or sexual violence. 120 million girls have experienced forced sex or other sexual acts. Almost 750 million women and girls alive today married before their 18th birthday. The percentage of women who have experienced some form of sexual harassment: 57% in Bangladesh, 77% Cambodia, 79% in India, 87% in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, in India, was done in public. So basically, in this case, even if they are in public, in the open, sexual harassment can happen, even just like what Carol was telling us. Going to the Middle East and Africa, 37% of Arab women have experienced some form of violence in their lifetime. In Egypt, 99%, that's like almost every woman, surveyed across 7 regions, have experienced sexual harassment. In Nigeria, 43% of girls are married off before their 18th birthday. In South Africa, almost 3 out of 4 women experienced some form of abuse in the past year. And these statistics, they got them from many different studies, some from the United Nations and others from other places, like really, really big organizations. In Zimbabwe, 1 in 5 women reported that the first time they had sex was forced or against their will. And in Zimbabwe and Rwanda, 1 in 3 women experienced physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner during their lifetime. So this is happening also in the families, even with people who are already married. In the United States, it's no exception. 65% of all women surveyed had experienced street harassment. In North America, 1 in 4 women will be sexually assaulted during their lifetime. Going to Europe, Denmark, 52% of women in European member states who have experienced physical and sexual violence. Finland, 47, Sweden, 46, Netherlands, 45, France, 44, United Kingdom, 44, Latvia, 39, Luxembourg, 38, Belgium, 36, Germany, 35. This is a plague that's going on all over the world. It's not only in one part of the world. In the United Kingdom, 64% of women have experienced unwanted sexual harassment in public places. We go to Brazil. 86% of women have been subjected to harassment or violence in public. 84% of Brazilian women reported having been sexually harassed by police. These are the people who are supposed to be taking care of people. Percentage of women in Mexico who have experienced sexual violence during their lifetime, 38% in Mexico nationally and 60% in Mexico City alone. We continue. Australia, 70% of women who have experienced physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner during their lifetime, while in Fiji, it is 64%. We go to Papua New Guinea, more than 90% of women and girls have experienced some form of violence on public transport. So, it is all over the world. And this is the reason why the women of the Adventist Church said, end it now. End it now. We can't end it if we keep this as a taboo topic that nobody wants to talk about. If we want to deny that it doesn't exist, it does exist. I don't think these statistics are only done to people who are not Adventists. It includes everyone. So let's go to the next question. What is the difference between sexual harassment and sexual abuse? I know you had mentioned that. So let's go back to you, Mrs. Oberholzer. What is the difference? Are they the same or are they different?
I think with sexual harassment, you can actually get away from it. When sexual abuse, it's something that you maybe cannot remove yourself from in many ways. Although sexual abuse usually happens with somebody that you know, or there are times, of course, you don't know that person. Sexual harassment has, on a scale from 1 to 10, where sexual abuse is more like 10. So to me, it is different. One thing that I experienced here, and some others have experienced here, is that people, especially men, will comment about your body. To me, that is harassment. The abuse would be if they touched my body.
Yes.
So these are some of the differences I feel.
Sexual abuse comes with the physical. There's a physical element on sexual abuse. While in sexual harassment, not all sexual harassment is not sexual abuse, or everything is not physical. Let's go to Dr. Rosario. What's the difference between the two?
Usually in my reading, I found out that laymen use the term interchangeably. In my reading, though, I found out that when you say sexual harassment, yes, I agree with the definition of term, but also sexual harassment is a term used in workplaces. Like, okay, it's verbal. You harass the person. It's like, I do this to you in exchange of, favor, that for that. And it's verbal. So it's like you are feeling harassed. In my reading, though, I found out that the term sexual abuse is usually associated with children. Yeah. When with children, it's like always the term is sexual abuse. In the workplace, usually it's sexual harassment. But when there is really the act of sex, then I think that's sexual abuse.
And sexual assault
Yes,
is
of course.
also part of sexual abuse. Okay, Mrs. Kingston, please help us.
All right. I agree to both of them, what they said, but there's, what I would say is there's a thin line of opinion there, because it almost looks different, of course. For me, sexual harassment can be in this way. If a person stares at me in an indifferent way, looking at me, with a different eye, I can call that as sexual harassment. Yes. And sexual abuse can be the, sexual forced action, of sex on another person.
Okay, let's come down to IS. What is usually done here? That people may be doing, they may not be meaning to hurt somebody, but maybe from their cultural background, they're doing this, but when you look at it, it's like, this is actually sexual harassment. Let's start with you, because he said we should start with you. What have you seen here at IS, or in the Philippines, since you're not Filipina, that you feel like, okay, that is really sexual harassment? And I think, if we can focus on what might be happening at IS, will be even more important, because here we can educate ourselves. What is happening outside there, we may not be too much into correcting what is happening outside.
Well, to say about IS, I have not seen nor experienced.
But I heard some people are kissing people here.
All right.
In the public.
That's their culture.
Exactly, but it counts as sexual harassment in some other cultures.
Yeah, in my culture, of course, it's not, not acceptable.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I would say.
What should we do with that? With the two cultures? Some that say kissing in public and hugging is fine, and those who come from cultures where it's not fine. Which way should we go?
I think we should, talk about it. We should not, because for me, if I see someone kissing, and my culture doesn't allow that, it's really uncomfortable. And I would like, if I'm brave enough to go and tell the person, like, it's really, it's not good for me to see that. I mean, if you want to do it, where I could not see you, please. Yeah, I feel
but okay, let me take it further. This is two people from the same culture, and they understand each other, that hugging and kissing in public is fine. It's a greeting. Will you still be uncomfortable with that, even if it was not done to you?
Well, if I still feel uncomfortable.
Okay. All right, let's go to Dr. Rosario. What is commonly done here at IS that may count as sexual harassment?
I think I see that we are more free in touching. I think we should be cautious in doing that one. Like, you should understand where the other person is coming from and respect that. I mean, I do not question that, because I talked with one of my students, and she told me that even among them who share the same culture, they also know. They know when somebody touches and kisses with a not malicious intent, they will feel it, because they do this one with a very, pure-hearted motive. And when somebody does it maliciously, they know it. But even if you do not have any malicious intent, considering that we come from different cultures here, I think we should be careful to whom we do this one. Normally, we from the Philippines, we are not really into this. So there are times that I would feel uncomfortable. But of course, the thing is, it's very difficult to push the person away, because, like, for me, I'm a teacher. I cannot insult this way. Like, somebody is coming and hugs you. Of course, you cannot push the person away. You cannot do a sign like this one. So what I do is, in a way, I cooperate.
Cooperative
Because,
learning.
of course, I want to be respectful. But I think, let us be considerate. Some of our gestures may offend others, and let us take that into consideration.
Thank you so much. One thing I want to highlight here is that if you come from a culture where they kiss, we're not saying that it's a wrong culture. No, it is not. But we just want to say in other cultures, people do not kiss. And so if somebody does not accept the kiss or the hug, we should not be offended that the person doesn't like me. This person is really weird. I was just trying to be a very nice brother in Christ and hugging and kissing, but they did not allow me to do that. On the other side, if somebody comes, let me just zero in, correct me if I'm wrong. If somebody comes from Latin America, the tendency is to be physical, hugging and kissing. If somebody just arrived from Latin America and they do that to you, do not, just don't be offended, because that person probably does not know yet that in India, for example, you do not kiss somebody who is not your wife. It is a pleasant greeting that is ongoing. And someday when you go to Latin America, you will be kissing a lot of people. It will happen. It happened to me. I resisted for the first 3 months. Just like what you said, it's like somebody would come, I see them coming straight. It's like I just started making some movement to show that I'm not going to welcome that kiss. After 6 months, I was kissing everyone. And everybody was kissing my wife in my presence. And we didn't mind that at all until time came for us to travel back to the United States to visit our friends. And we started kissing them. And they said, Safari, what's going on with you? We were already sold to the culture. At the beginning, it can be very uncomfortable, but please, if my good Professor Besco kisses you or hugs you, he has no bad motive in doing that. He can actually kiss you in front of his wife, and his wife probably will not mind that because he will probably be greeting you. So if it happens, just go with it, and after that say, actually, I come from China. In China, we don't. That's why you saw that I was feeling a little awkward. So that's what is going on here. But I think it's your culture. And then with that, you have a cultural exchange. He will talk about his culture. You will talk about your culture, and maybe eventually get a compromise. Okay, whenever you meet me, just wave. And okay, from now on, you can now that understand, and maybe you can start kissing me anyways.
May I
yes,
add
yes,
something?
please.
I think it should not only be between opposite sexes.
Correct.
It should also be, I noticed that some of my female students are uncomfortable even with the touch. I mean, sometimes I feel I feel a cringe, you know, and I realize, oh no, I should not do that.
Yes, that is true. We have cultures where men cannot touch men and women cannot touch women, even just patting. And yet we have cultures where you see men and men holding hands and walking. And we have talked about this in some other sessions on this United in Diversity. You say, men holding, on the shoulder and the other one on the waist, and they're walking joyfully and talking. And, somebody who comes from a culture like that, and you do that to a man from another culture, you'll find them trying to, withdraw from that hug. And they are both men. So it can happen also with people with the same gender. Yes. Let's go to you.
I think one of the things that has bothered me most is this girls holding hands and boys holding hands. The girls and boys. To me, this is not, where I come from, it's not normal. However, the kissing and hugging doesn't bother me, because you very quickly understand whether this is sexual or this is a greeting. However, when I first came to IS, we were shaking everybody's hand. And I very soon learned that Koreans and Chinese and Japanese, you don't have to touch their hands. So if I went, even now, when I will wait for the man to put out his hand before I will greet him. Because I don't know if he feels this might be part of sexual harassment or not, but they are a no-touch society, in my opinion. So I'm trying to respect that and not touch them. However, some of the other things that I think has bothered me more is how people talk about sex in the workplace or in small groups in the classroom, and definitely how they talk about other people's bodies. Especially guys don't seem to have a problem undressing people and talking about it so sexy, this size and that size and all the rest. To me, that is not acceptable.
It is sexual harassment in the definition of sexual harassment. And that should stop. And if we hear people engaging in this kind of discussion, we need to stop the person. Let's have some dignity for ourselves. These things end up becoming now sexual abuse, and these things can lead to sexual assault. And actually, in general, they have a negative connotation that is not for the dignity of the people. We're going to the last question. How can we prevent or address sexual harassment here at IS? I'm going to start with Dr. Rosario. Just briefly, 30 seconds each.
I don't know if we have an anti-sexual harassment policy, but I think we do have. We do? Well, that's very good. And another thing is we publicize it, we talk about it in the part of our orientation maybe, and like this one, this is a very good session to make everyone aware about this, like what do you do? And I think we should also inform, especially our young girls and our young boys whose minds are not very mature yet, that when something is done to them that makes them feel uncomfortable, they should tell about it. In the Philippines, we are a culture of shame. So we suffer because we cannot say these things. Oh no, you do not tell this because you are ashamed, your family is shamed. But I think we should educate that it's not about us shaming, it's just saying reporting if we are a victim of sexual harassment.
And in this case, I think, as it was mentioned in the other session, if we can have people can report this to the chaplaincy office. If you don't want your family to be involved, report this to the chaplaincy. They will take, and the counseling, I think they're working together now. They will be able to help you with all confidentiality because they are trained in this. Yes, you want to add something else? On what we can do to prevent.
I've dealt with some issues of sexual harassment, and one of the things that I think is very important that we teach our children is to say no. This is not acceptable.
Yes.
And not only not acceptable to tell that person this is not acceptable, they need to know right from wrong as young children. As adults, we need to try and protect them. Make sure that we do not put them in a situation where they could be harassed or abused. Also, our colleagues and people here, sleepovers is another big no-no in my opinion. Something else we need to say, like, because of the shame culture, we need to say that they are not ashamed. The person doing it should be ashamed of what they were doing. So we need to take the blame off the person and put it on the perpetrator instead of the victim. And many times we get this confused, which causes more shame and more problems. So by standing with the victim and not saying, oh, it's because the way you were dressed or because you have a slight slit in your skirt. Yes, and this usually is the girl who has enticed the man, but he has now made sexual strides towards the girl, one way or another.
Thank you so much. We're going to the last.
I think as parents, we need to educate our children, whether boy or girl, how they should respect each other at home. And that behavior can go out, with other children around or their friends. And another way is, I think the way we dress, as ladies especially, counts a lot. Okay, because our bodies, God has created us in that way. Even when you look back in the Bible, when Adam and Eve sinned, they were naked, for sure, but God clothed them. So I think the way we dress could prevent us from that. But the most important thing is parents have to educate the children at home.
Let me add just one more thing, and then we're going to end. You want to add something else?
And teachers should educate their students.
Teachers should also educate the students. And let me speak to the men, since the perpetrators in most cases are men. Have some dignity. Have some dignity. It does not honor you. It does not honor us when we are sexually harassing women. Young people who are single, if you are interested in a woman, go and tell them that you want to live with them for the rest of their life. And if they say yes, we shall celebrate together. And it will be made public as we have seen it here at IS. If they say no, that is the end of the story. Go back to fishing because there's more fish in the ocean. Thank you so much for being with us today. We have learned a lot of things, and I think we will continue to ponder on what we have learned today. If you have questions and comments, please email us at united@is.edu. Again, our IS email address is united@is.edu. Until we meet again next time, we want to encourage you to be united in diversity.